I wanted most of my portfolio to be in Bitcoin, ETH, and Sol. And of the three, I'm most bullish on ETH, especially with the ETFs coming up, but just based on everything else in my years in the space, I think Sol is the other coin, the other major that I'm bullish on. And I think my overall philosophy was to be majors heavy.
GM, good morning. Welcome to The Milk Road Show, the daily crypto show that's so bright, sunflowers turn our way. I'm your host, Jay Hamilton, and today we're talking about why markets are pumping, starting with BlackRock. Larry Fink, CEO of Blackrock, went on CNBC. BlackRock's the largest asset manager in the world, and he was shilling Bitcoin to everybody. The ETH ETF launch date is set, and stick around to the end because if you're wondering, what should you be investing in right now? Well, Zeneca is going to share his portfolio allocation with all of you at the end. So make sure you stick around for that. On that note, here to guide us today is legendary crypto investor Zeneca. Zen, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, as always. It's been a great week in crypto after many weeks of bleeding. So I don't know, it feels good.
It feels good. It feels good. I think all the things are happening that we've been talking about for weeks. And if you guys have been listening in, you knew that we were seeing the signs and things are looking good. So it's the beginning. I hope. We'll see. I still think we could see some chop through August, but we'll see. Let's start today with Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, largest asset manager in the world, went on CNBC earlier this week and basically told everyone to buy Bitcoin. I'm going to play the clip and then we'll jump into it.
As you know, I was a skeptic.
Yes.
I was a proud skeptic. And I studied it, learned about it, and I came away saying, okay, my opinion 5 years ago was wrong. Here's my opinion today. This is what I believe in today. I believe the opportunity today. I believe Bitcoin is legitimate. I'm not trying to say there's not misuses like everything else, but it is a legitimate financial instrument that allows you to have maybe uncorrelated, non-correlated type of returns. I believe it is an instrument that you invest in when you're more frightened, though. Right. It is an instrument when you believe that countries are debasing their currency, debasing their currency by excess deficits, and some countries are. I believe we have countries where you're frightened of your everyday existence, and if you have an opportunity to invest in something that is outside your country's control, then you can have more financial control. And so I'm a major believer that there is a role for Bitcoin in portfolios. I believe you're going to see that as one of the asset classes that we all look at. I look at it as digital gold, as I said before, and I do believe there's a real need for everyone to look at it as one alternative to, I would say, the optimism that I have in the world. If you want to hedge hope, Bitcoin is not an instrument for hope unless you're hopeful you're going to make a lot of money on it. But I look at it as a vehicle in which you're expressing your financial acumen in something that you're more frightened of the world, you're more frightened of your existence. And I believe there's a great industrial use for it. And I think a lot of people are missing that.
All right, Zen, after seeing that clip, what do you think about what Larry Fink said? And how big of an impact does he really have on the markets, maybe not necessarily the crypto native markets, but the TradFi markets?
He has a massive impact on markets. We saw this when the Bitcoin ETFs were first coming out. He basically did the rounds and went on CNBC and all like the money finance shows and spoke about why it was coming out, why he was bullish on Bitcoin. And he's doing that again now, not just about talking about Bitcoin, but also about ETH with the ETH ETFs coming out. And I think what was really great about this clip is that he spoke about how he used to be a skeptic, like so many people, that he did some research, he changed his mind, and now he's a believer. And I think that's a journey that a lot of people have been through themselves, can see themselves going through. Like everyone's either a believer or a skeptic for the most part. And so it will resonate with a lot of people, and especially for like TradFi market participants, but also like fund managers. I think when someone like Larry Fink, who is, like you said, the head of BlackRock, the largest asset,
the king
king of money management in traditional finance, he comes out and he's like very vocally pro crypto, especially pro Bitcoin and ETH. It gives a lot of cover for other asset managers to sort of get away with being pro crypto. Because let's say 3-4 years ago, you never would have found a finance manager being like, you know what, it's sensible to have a small percentage of your portfolio in crypto for X, Y, and Z reasons. They would have been feared to lose their jobs, to lose their clients, to get laughed, to get something wrong, to lose people money. But when Larry Fink comes out and all these other large companies and ETFs come out, now all of a sudden it becomes like normalized, it becomes acceptable, it becomes standard, it becomes default, it becomes almost silly not to have a little bit of crypto or Bitcoin in your portfolio as a hedge against, as he said, hope, but against in inflation and the US dollar devaluing or whatever currency devaluing. So massive news. It's going to keep coming as well as the ETFs get closer, as they launch. BlackRock makes money by people buying their ETFs and they get a small percentage fee. So they're going to be out marketing, promoting it. It's kind of really, really, really good for crypto.
I think that's the big thing that we all forget is how much we need to teach the whole world about crypto and what it is. And that takes time and it takes marketing budgets. And we are at a period right now where we're seeing that more than we've ever seen that before. Larry Fink going on CNBC, talking about it, all the ads that are coming out right now for the Ethereum ETF, which we're going to talk about in a second. So that can't be understated, is what most people have seen in the media for years about crypto has been bad headlines. And now for the first time, and we saw it with the Bitcoin ETF, but now we're seeing it with the Ethereum ETF. And I think we're going to see it through the rest of this year, is we're going to see more and more people willing to stand up and say positive things. And then the media will spread that. And that's what will bring more, as you said, more normies, more standard fund managers who maybe didn't have that confidence to tell their clients to go do that because they don't want to be laughed at. So it's an exciting time. Let's move on to the Ethereum ETF, which Larry Fink also talked about Ethereum. We didn't play that clip, but he also talked about how BlackRock is very bullish on Ethereum. So that's great as well. And that teases up nicely for the big news this week was the date is set for the Ethereum ETF.
Yeah, July 23rd. So that's a week-ish from now. There's a lot of speculation going into what is going to happen. What's the price action going to be like? Is it going to be bullish for ETH right out of the gate? The real answer is nobody knows. Like, we have very little information to go on. Like, we've seen one previous crypto coin have an ETF. Like, maybe in 5 years' time when there's Bitcoin, ETH, Sol, Doge, like there's 50 ETFs and a new one comes out, we can look back and go, when an ETF launches, this is generally what happens. We have very little information to go on so far, but the information we do have to go on looking at the Bitcoin ETF launch is that, price dropped initially. Like, maybe there was a small pump like the day of, and then there was kind of a significant crash as we saw all these outflows from Grayscale when people were sort of, selling their Grayscale bags and moving over to one of the other ETFs or something else. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see the same again. So, like, some people just think it's bullish right out the gate and price will be up only. That can definitely happen. Like, nobody knows, but I would not be shocked to see some other sort of price action. We just have to wait and see. And like, trying to guess and predict is such a difficult thing. I mean, I was on this show like a month ago talking about how bullish I was on Blast and how it was going to come out. And like, one of the things I'm focusing a lot of time and energy on, and it did okay, but nowhere near what I was expecting or most people were expecting out of the gate. And so just predictions are really, really tough. And the safest strategy I've always felt is to sort of hedge and not put all your eggs in one basket. Like, don't just leverage long ETH into the ETF launch, because it could drop and then it can go up, or it can drop for a month and then it can go up. One thing I feel very confident in, though, is long term, it is very, very bullish for ETH because it will just slowly trickle in more buy volume. And even more bullish than the Bitcoin ETF, one of the biggest differences is Bitcoin still has miners mining all the time and sort of like selling Bitcoin. ETH has no real miners or no inflation of the token. It's basically a stable supply coin. Maybe it goes up a little bit, down a little bit over time, but adding any sort of significant buy volume to ETH, that will generally be locked up for long term. Like most funds and traditional investors investing, they don't look to trade and flip on a weekly basis. They buy into their retirement account, or they buy, 1% of my portfolio is now going into crypto and I hold that for 10 years. That's just locking up supply. So very, very bullish long term. No one knows what's going to happen.
I completely agree. I think very likely that the first 2 to 4 weeks are choppy and could be a drop, just like the Bitcoin ETF. Everybody forgets. Everybody thinks that the Bitcoin ETF flew immediately, or sorry, the price of Bitcoin flew as a result of the ETF, but it dropped for, as you said, for those first 2 weeks.
It was scary.
It was really scary, right? And so what do you think is going to happen? I would bet that exact same thing is going to happen here. And we're all going to forget and we're all going to get scared. And everyone's going to be like, the ETH ETF is a failure. There's going to be all these media posts. Like, everybody take a deep breath. That's okay if that happens. Because as you said, long term, when you zoom out, you look at the Bitcoin ETF, we crushed every ETF record ever. Over 15 billion in 6 months is never, like, I think the largest ETF previously was 3 billion in a year. So like, we're crushing those. And ETH ETF predictions, go back and listen to our episode from 2 days ago with Matt Hogan from Bitwise, where we break down his ETH ETF predictions. But I'll give you the TLDR. He thinks 3 to 5 billion by the end of the year. So that's in the next 6 months. And he thinks 15 billion by the end of 2025. And if we hit 3 to 5 billion by the end of this year, plus ETH is in a bull run, which all signs are pointing towards that could be the case, then ETH price could easily hit 10K by the end of the year. So things are looking up. Look, not financial advice. Everything is do your own research, but feeling pretty good about that. Zen, let's go over to the Bitcoin ETF for a second, because they saw tremendous inflows this week, which haven't really seen. It's been a rough few months for the Bitcoin ETF in terms of inflows. But I got a chart up here where you can see that in the past week, 2 weeks, things have really started to elevate, and we've had a few days, several days above 200 million and one day above 400 million in net inflows for the Bitcoin ETF. What do you think when you see this?
Yeah, it's always bullish thoughts when there's like significant net inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs. It's different than it was in the first couple of months. I think back then, the price action really followed the ETF inflows. Like, all the attention was on the ETFs. And if it was a bad day or week for the inflows, if it was negative, then, and there were outflows, then price generally tended to drop. And the reverse was true. When it was a lot of money coming in, we saw price going up. And I think that was part of that was, the market impact of the buy volume and the buy pressure. But more of it, I think, was the sentiment analysis and people going, oh, wait, look at all this money coming to ETFs. Bitcoin is just going to keep going up, and we're going to keep going up. Now we've seen, more than half a year of, Bitcoin ETFs existing. And we've seen like all ends of the spectrum where the ETFs, the inflows have been high and then the market hasn't really cared, or it's been low and the market hasn't really cared. And I think that's just a sign of the market maturing and realizing, you know what, some weeks it's going to be high, some weeks it's going to be low. There's so many other factors at play that we're not going to just look at the ETFs and like base our actions purely on that, as it seemed like a lot of people were doing early on. But it's still very bullish. Like, Bitcoin ETF inflows are better than outflows, and it means that there's buy volume coming in, and the longer it sustains and is like this, and we see these numbers, the better it is going to be. And so, yeah, like, it's bullish. It's just not as bullish as it was at the start of the year, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. Other news that came out today that caught both of our attention, which is super exciting, is SEC Commissioner Hester Pierce went on Zach Guzman's show and said that, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically said that staking and in-kind redemption for the ETH and the Bitcoin ETF are open for reconsideration.
I mean, first of all, let me just say Hester Pierce is amazing. I remember all the way back in, I think it was 2021 or early 2022, when NFTs were going crazy. The SEC was putting it like very aggressively going after a lot of projects. And she had a dissenting opinion where she was like, well, it makes no sense, your strategy and what you're doing, and it's very illogical, and basically ripping the SEC apart while being a part of the SEC. So, yeah, which was great to see. And she's just proven to be like a very reasonable, sensible person. Like, she's not gung-ho pro crypto and has blinders on. She looks at things, takes all the facts into consideration, thinks about protecting retail and doing her job at the SEC, but also in a way that is, in line with this brand new technology and not throwing it out the window. And so when we think of staking and in-kind redemption for ETFs and how they weren't approved for the Bitcoin ETFs originally, that didn't really make sense, like, to have no in-kind redemption. And to not have staking allowed doesn't really make sense. It's like such a core part of ETH. It's not nefarious. There's nothing really risky about it. It's part of securing the blockchain. If ETH exists, ETH staking exists, and it's just a primary part of it. And it should be treated as not an evil thing, not as a bad thing. And so hopefully that what she's saying comes to fruition. I think a lot of it is predicated on a change in government. If, Biden goes out, Trump goes in, which prediction markets are predicting, it probably makes this more likely to happen. We just have to see, but I really hope it does come true.
Speaking about the possibility of a change in government, other big news this week was Trump announced his running mate, his VP, to be JD Vance. From a crypto perspective, assuming Trump is the next president and JD Vance would be his vice president, what does that mean for crypto?
You got to imagine it means good things. I didn't really know anything about JD Vance prior to like 2 days ago or yesterday, whenever it was announced. And then I saw all these clips popping up online. One of them is a really funny one. I think it's from like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe sooner. But he was basically just ripping into Gary Gensler. It was just like he was giving a speech at a conference, and he just for like minutes was just like talking about how terrible a job Gary Gensler was doing and how like just nonsensical and aggressive he was being for all the wrong reasons, for political reasons rather than doing his job reasons. And that's obviously a good thing for crypto. I think everyone in the crypto space can agree that Gary has been steering the SEC in a very almost like vindictive direction against crypto, like a crusade against crypto. And so if he comes in and starts having some sort of influence on policy, and which you imagine he would, and changing around the SEC, then and it's got to be positive. And the other thing that I saw pop up was that I think it was like, again, four-ish years ago, he disclosed he held $250,000 worth of Bitcoin. And so this is someone who has skin in the game, has had skin in the game for a long time, well before any sort of like, there's no political benefit for him having that. He was just personally believed in Bitcoin and crypto, and it was and is an advocate, which I think is something we've never really had a pro-crypto government in America, at least. And honestly, not in too many nations. It doesn't really exist much. And so it's great to see, again, from a purely crypto perspective. So gotta hope it's true. But the last thing I'll say on this, I think Vitalik put out a blog post on something along the lines of like, don't make your political opinions based only on whether the parties are pro or against crypto, which I think is a very valid point. Like, obviously, these politicians exist well outside of the crypto sphere, and they have all sorts of views and opinions and all sorts of other things. And it might not be the most sensible thing to purely base your opinions on people on whether they're pro or against crypto. Look at all the facts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. So true. Okay, last week you came on the show and we talked about how you were changing your portfolio allocation. You stepped back, you saw an opportunity to realign your portfolio based upon what you think of the current state of the market and what you think of certain tokens. When we talked last week, you had not finalized your new allocation. Now you have finalized it. Walk us through what your new portfolio allocation looks like and why you decided this.
Yeah, so I mean, I touched on it. We spoke about it last week already, and I think my overall philosophy was to be majors heavy. Like I wanted most of my portfolio to be in Bitcoin, ETH, and Sol. And of the three, I'm most bullish on ETH. I think, especially with the ETFs coming up, but just based on everything else in my years in the space, I think it has a lot more room to run. It has staying power. It has all sorts of positives to it. So I wanted ETH to be my largest percentage, and 45% just worked out to be the number when I took into account everything else. 20% Bitcoin was also something that I've never really had before in the past. I've always held a very small amount of Bitcoin, thinking that other assets would outperform, but I'm no longer of the same mindset. I think there's too many coins and alts competing with one another that will bleed against Bitcoin generally as time goes on. And two, the other perspective is that as your portfolio gets larger, it becomes more about capital preservation and less about like rapid growth. And like I don't want or need to 10x my portfolio. If I can like 2 or 3x it over the next 5 years, that would be amazing for me. And probably the best chance with the lowest risk is holding Bitcoin and ETH. So 20% Bitcoin, I think I'll be very comfortable when I get there. These are all numbers that I'm aiming towards. I'm very far away from at the moment. I own probably like 1% of my portfolio in Bitcoin right now. And then Sol is the other coin, the other major that I'm bullish on. 10%. I tweeted this out, and a lot of people posted like, "Oh, the Sol percentage is too low. You need to up that."
I was going to ask about this. Yeah.
I'm still comfortable with that. I think it's still a very healthy amount of Sol. Like I said last week, I'm very bullish on Sol this cycle. I'm less bullish on it long term, and I'm generally not about trying to time cycles or time markets. So I'll put 10% in. Maybe I rebalance in another 3-6 months or whatever, but I feel comfortable with that. 10% alts and memes. Originally, I had 10% for alts and then another 10% for memes. And then my ETH percentage was only 35%. I decided to join them because that's still a significant amount of money in altcoins and meme coins. And those are the things that you're really hoping can do a 3, 5, 10, 20x. And if that happens, then that's amazing. And I can take profits and put in other ones. If it doesn't happen and those bleed, I'd much rather it bleed only 10% of my portfolio rather than say 20, 30, 40%, which maybe it currently is at. Especially when you combine the alts and memes with NFTs, which kind of in terms of risk profile are very, very similar. They're both very high risk, potentially high reward. And so the other comment I got a lot was like the NFT percentage seemed high to a lot of people, which it is, I think, for most normal people and traders and investors. But because I came up in 2021 and most of my growth and value came through NFTs, I mean, in 2021, my NFT value percentage was like 99%. And then it's just slowly dropped over the years. Now we're probably sitting around 35, 40%, which is still crazy high to have your entire crypto portfolio be that high a percent in NFTs. And it's going to be the toughest thing for me to get that number down because it requires selling things that I have a lot of conviction and belief in. And we'll see how and well I can do it. It's sort of like these are the goals I have now and the targets to hit. It'll probably take me a month, I would say, if not longer, to get anywhere close to these numbers. But I feel very good now that I have this goal. And I think this is an exercise that everyone should do. Like once a month or once a quarter, sit down, spend half an hour thinking about what is your ideal portfolio allocation? Why do you want it? And then how can you get there? And just doing that exercise on a semi-regular basis will make you make better decisions during the day, during the week, when you're trading and when you're investing, and set you up better for the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to put in the work. Too many people expect to get rich quick, get rich easy. That's not how this works. Anybody you know that is successful, that you follow on Twitter, people like Zeneca, they've done it through hard work consistently, day in, day out over the years. The thing that stands out to me, Zen, is 75% of your portfolio is in the majors. That's the number I keep seeing is more and more people are going towards the majors. I'm seeing around 80% is the standard that I'm seeing. Now, how that division is made is different for different people. And I think our listeners, you make your own decision. But what you can take away from this is somewhere around 80% of your portfolio should probably be in the majors right now. And then the rest, you're probably not 15% in NFTs like Zeneca is, which is fine, right? You're probably a little bit slightly different.
Altcoins, meme coins. Yeah.
All right. Awesome, Zen. Thanks so much for joining the show today again. Appreciate your insights. And we'll keep the portfolio allocation going. We'll keep our listeners up to date on that. Maybe we'll do a quarterly show or something like that about that.
That'd be fun. Yeah. Like I said, it helps me to think it through as I talk it through and explain it as well. So happy to keep doing that.
Right on. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
In case you missed it, here's what else happened in crypto news today. But first, I want to give our sponsor, Agoric, a quick shout out. They're building a world where your crypto apps work together seamlessly, just like your favorite Web 2 apps. No more walled gardens, just smooth sailing across the decentralized web. All of that only using JavaScript. That's the future Agoric is building. The team just announced their early access program. So head over to agoric.com/EAP and join today to start orchestrating the future of wealth in Web3. Also in news today, Grayscale, the company known for its Bitcoin ETF, launched a new fund focused on cryptocurrencies involved in AI. The fund, called Grayscale Decentralized AI Fund, is currently available to accredited investors only, so not open to everybody. The fund's initial holdings include tokens like NEAR, RNDR, FIL, TAU, and LPT. The announcement had an immediate impact on the market, with the mentioned tokens experiencing an increase of a few percent. And Grayscale believes that blockchain-based AI protocols offer solutions to potential risks associated with centralized AI. A little bit of inside information: the Milk Road Pro team is currently considering making a change to the Milk Road Pro portfolio and one of these tokens is on the list. You're going to have to go pro to find out which one. Thanks so much for listening in, everybody. Have a wicked awesome day.
Thank you for listening to Milk Road Radio, the easiest path to get smarter about crypto. If you like this episode, share it and hit subscribe or follow so you don't miss out on the next one. There's also a link in the description to our free 5-minute daily newsletter where we simplify crypto for you while making you laugh. And if you're willing to step up your crypto investing game, then we'll leave a link to Milk Road Pro as well, your #1 resource to help you invest successfully in crypto. One final note, this podcast is for educational purposes only, and nothing we say is financial advice. Crypto is risky, so you should never invest more than you're willing to lose. Thank you, friends, and we'll see you in the next one.